Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Raising Robots Friends, the new expansion to Raising Robots. This is a prototype over here. To be clear, the game in front of you in general is the final game from Raising Robots, but the expansion components over here are a prototype, rules, components, subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. I'm going to first tell you, well, let's do a little bit about a brief overview of what Raising Robots is. For those who missed it, I do have a full review if you want to check that out, but I'll also give you a short summary for this video here. I'll then talk about what the expansion adds, and then my thoughts on the expansion, links and timestamps to everything down below. So, short pitch on Raising Robots. Raising Robots is going to be a game that plays out across 8 rounds. You're going to be tracking those 8 rounds here, and every single round, players are going to choose which phases from Upgrade, Assemble, Design, Fabricate, or Recycle they want to play. Players are going to go ahead and choose 2 phases to activate. They're going to have energy cards that choose how strong those phases are, and there's also a collaborative aspect where certain cards will place energy cubes into these pools, which will help everyone be able to do a little bit more in the game. So 8 rounds to the game, everyone chooses 2 phases to activate each round, but you may get more activations than that because of the group collective of players. Those phases in the game are basically going to be, you're going to go through a phase over here where you upgrade. We'll come back to this soon because it'll make more sense shortly. You're going to assemble, which is where you create new robots, placing them into your grids over here. I have a lot of robots set up right now. This is not how a game would start. You'd basically have a few robots to start, and you'd be adding robots as you go, paying their various costs. You then go through Design, Fabricate, and Recycle, which are effectively ways to activate each of those rows and all the robots you placed into those rows, making sure you've matched where a robot goes. So you have basic robots going into their colors, and then blue are multicolor and can go in any row. So effectively, you're going through phases of building robots, activating each row, and then upgrade, which is the first phase, allows you to remove different tokens from these spots, making activations on those rows more powerful, and then placing them onto robots who need them, giving you the upgrades that the robots have. So upgrade is a way of making everything stronger in Tableau. Assemble builds robots, and Design, Fabricate, and Recycle activate the rows, and there's an energy system where the cards you play, the own cards that you contribute, as well as the energy cubes that go into the pools over here, will enhance how strong your activations are, both for the basic printed onboard effects, as well as for the robots themselves as you go. You're trying to basically build out an activation tableau that will work together as cohesively as possible, giving you the resources you need in-game to keep your engine going, but also making sure you have the points and rewards at the end of the game in order to score as many points as possible. That's the very short pitch of what Raising Robots is. My general thoughts on Raising Robots is I think it has some of the best art I've seen in any game, but then more importantly than that, the game itself I overall enjoy. It has a good mix of building out a tableau, upgrading that tableau, a degree of being mindful what other players are doing and paying attention to their engine just a little bit, while also having control over your own engine and having enough things to go through while you build everything out that I find it a very satisfying game. I gave it a 4 out of 5. As far as Raising Robots Friends, what does that add over here? Raising Robots Friends is going to add a few things. Some of them you've seen before from Raising Robots Pets, which was the expansion that was in the original crowdfunding campaign for Raising Robots. So there's Raising Robots, there's the mini expansion Pets, and then there's Friends, which is the new expansion that has a bunch of things, again, some of which you've seen already. So the first things that you've seen already is going to be the multicolor cards over here. You have these cards, effectively, these new cards, and I have exclusively new cards set up over here, just so you can see as much art as possible, but we have a whole smorgasbord of these new cards as well, representing the various nations around the world, hence the friends part. But you have new cards over here, and the big thing that's going to be consistent across them is going to be end game triggers. Most, not all, but most of the new cards are going to have things that give you points at the end of the game instead of something that's happening during the game, which is a big change from, something new that I haven't seen in Raising Robots till now. The other things you're going to see that are familiar, and that may not be familiar if you haven't played with the Pets expansion, is going to be multicolor cards that can go into different rows, but then also adjacencies where you look at robots around them. In the Pets expansion, you would often be looking at various robots in different rows or adjacencies around that robot and getting points or in-game rewards for different types of robots that match certain criteria. So again, those might be new to you if you haven't played with Pets, or they might not be if you have played with Pets. As far as what does this expansion add past those things, so the first thing is going to be the expansion adds new cards. We have a whole smorgasbord of new cards that can represent the nations around the world with those mechanics I just told you about, some new, some not so much. And then we also have, we're going to have additionally more cards than other categories. So we have new Inventors over here, we have new class cards. Those are going to be additional things that give you more variety to the things you can do in the game, or the Inventors always giving you that strong degree of asymmetry. In Raising Robots, you're always going to have Inventors. You start the game by drawing 2 Inventors and picking which one you want as your ability for the game, and that's going to give you a lot of ways to break the rules, get extra points, get extra resources in the game, and we have 6 new ones being added over here. So effectively, for the most part right now, we have new content that is similar to the old content, but more of it, but then some of these new cards over here are going to give you end game abilities to your engine that weren't there previously. But the big things over here, the biggest changes to the game are not just going to be these cards. These cards are a nice change. They get mixed into the pool. You'll have a bunch of these. You'll have new end game triggers. So there's new stuff going on here. And of course, new cute robot art, because the art in this game is still some of the best art I've seen in any game. But then most importantly, you're going to have the actual friends. I mentioned these nation states and friends, but that's only part of it. The real friends you're going to have is going to be this stack of cards over here. These stack of cards are kind of mini inventors. Effectively with these cards over here, what they do is they give you all these little abilities, but instead of giving you a whole smorgasbord of what an inventor does in the game and all the things that they're going to do to help you, they give you kind of isolated little boxes of different ways you can go ahead and get little extra things in addition to your inventor. So it's more abilities. But how do you get these? Well, you're going to get these through accomplishing goals. You see, you're going to have a new set of goals over here. You're going to have 4 different colors and 4 different colors of goals you can get. Each of these, you're going to have this token over here and then a card. The cards are going to be variable. So for each category, you have a bunch of different goals you can go ahead and utilize. So there's going to be variety to each game you play in terms of the combination of goals you're going for. But these goals, so for example, Think Tank over here, you need to have 7 of your wild resource on this board. So once you get this to 7, you'll be able to accomplish this goal. And the first person to do so will pay 1 of the costs up here in order to get the effect down here. So for example, you can go ahead and pay 4 of any resource in order to go ahead and draw 3 friends cards and pick 1 and get 2 points. Or you can just take 7 points if you think that'll be more beneficial to you, as well as the fact that you are limited to having 2 friends. So if you are accomplishing 3 or 4 goals, you will need to take the point benefit on some of them. But this is going to be a way you're going to go ahead and draw 3 friends and think to yourself, which of these abilities is better, or the way I do it, which of these guys looks more fun to add to my collection. That's not true. I kind of do a mix of both. I do like picking certain ones over here. Like I'd be a sucker for Albert, but it depends if his goal works for me. But either way, you're going to pick these over here. You'll take that card, you'll add it, and now you have a new ability, at least for the first 2 of these that you do. Now, once you do that, you will flip this over, and on the other side, players can still accomplish this goal, but with less effects over here. They're going to be paying a little bit less, so for example, they can pay 3 of any resource, but they're only going to be drawing 2 and keeping 1 without getting points. So they have less selection and fewer points, or if they take the point option, they get 4 points. So effectively, the second, third, fourth people to get there are going to pay fewer costs, but get lower rewards for doing so. So there is an incentive for being first on any of these goals. Again, you can accomplish as many of them as you want, but you'll only get friends twice, so if you accomplish all 4 goals, at least twice you'll be taking the 7-point bonus, which, hey, it's 7 points, it's nothing to sneeze at. And so that's what the expansion is basically going to be adding. We have new cards to the game, which represent new nations on these cards, but then again, some degree of change, mostly in terms of the end game triggers. You're going to have new inventors, new class cards, and then the big one is going to be friends, which you're going to be interacting with primarily through these objectives over here and accomplishing those objectives. So, now that we know what the expansion adds, let's tell you my thoughts on the expansion, how it interacts with the game, do I like it, do I not, all those things. And for the most part, there's nothing here not to like. Expansions can always be tricky, especially if they change with the game. It's rare, but it does happen that expansions can make a game worse, and that is certainly not the case over here. Everything the expansion adds is better, and I'd say that one of the best, well, there's a few different compliments I can give to an expansion. There's a few different types of compliments. The first is that it majorly changed up the game in a much better way. I don't think this does that in any way. This kind of adds more. More that's good though, but the expansion that the compliment that I can give that is a different but almost as good a compliment that I can give to this expansion is I would never play without this expansion. To someone new to Raising Robots, I would never play without this expansion. I always like when an expansion hits that for a few reasons. First of all, it means the expansion is easy to understand. It doesn't add so much layers of complexity. It also means I don't have to like filter things out when I'm playing with different groups of people. So that's a nice quality of life thing. This is an expansion I would always include. I don't think anything is significantly complicated. I think the idea of goals is a very common thing in games that we can all get behind and understand them fairly quickly. It might add a little bit more of strategy to your thinking. I think if this is their first game, that's another thing to consider. So there is that, but I think it works well for the game and adapts nicely. The more content is good, more inventors, there's more variety, more class cards. Again, I only have 2 in the prototype. I don't know if this plans for more, but again, and technically one of them is actually a replacement, so I don't really have that much in the prototype over over here, but again, I don't know. Check out the final campaign page for anything else that's being added. But more class cards, more robots, more inventors, that's just good. The end game abilities, I really like that because I like the fact that most of the robots you get are not going to be focusing on end game abilities or end game scoring, but that you'll have a nice smorgasbord of additional robots in there that will give you end game scoring, and that gives you additional things to work towards. So maybe you don't focus as much on some of your in-game engine. You'll still be doing a lot of in-game engine, but maybe a drop less on your in-game engine and a little bit more on, ooh, if I have like these 4 robots that give me end game points, maybe I can work towards those goals. And you won't be doing it for everything because if you split your focus too much, you won't be able to get as much reward from it anyway. So you are trying to like have a few of these end game scorings and then figure out how you can work towards those. But it's developed asymmetry, which I really enjoy. And so overall, the end game scoring abilities are a nice addition. The fact that you have robots that care about the adjacency of other robots or multicolor robots, I'm already used to that from the pets expansion. It's nice, it's good if you happen to encounter those. Again, I think it adds a nice degree of variety to the types of robots you're experiencing. But then easily the highlight, because all of this is just more content, easily the highlight is going to be the objectives and the friends, because objectives I tend to like in any game. There are exceptions where sometimes an objectives can force you in directions that you wouldn't otherwise go and feel like it takes you out of the experience a bit or forces you down certain lanes. When you have 4 objectives like this, I do find that for the most part, it's not that hard to focus on 1 or 2, and frankly, because of the way the game rewards you with those friends, you're usually not going to be able to get all 4 anyway, or you can. I mean, if you really want to try, you probably can, but usually you're going to be working your way towards 1 or 2 of them. You can find your pathways. If you happen to get more, great. They usually aren't so game-breaking from the objectives I've seen so far, and I haven't played with all of them, but from the objectives I've seen so far, they aren't so game-breaking as to take you out of your ability to achieve them without forcing yourself down certain lanes. Hopefully I said that correctly, but the idea being that you can usually work towards what you want while leaning a little bit out of your comfort zone in order to get those objectives. You won't be forced down something that will completely eliminate strategies you want to pursue for the most part on these objectives. So I like the objectives in general, but then more importantly, I like what the objectives give you, which is not just points. I like objectives because they give you points. It forces you to consider something else, and I like it when games force you to consider a lot of things, because that to me is where the strategy shines. If I have to like juggle like 7 different numbers in my head, that's where I'm trying to play with a degree of planning, a degree of instinct, and I'm like, ooh, this robot will give me points here, but I have to give up energy or a wild resource. I don't want to give my wild resource, but it will work a bit more towards those objectives. Is it worth it? I like juggling a lot of things in my head, but then more importantly, I like fun things, and the objectives will reward you with in-game abilities, which is my favorite thing because it just adds more to the stuff you can do. The fact that you have this entire deck full of friends over here, all giving you little abilities that will break things in different ways. So again, it's like you already have your starting inventor, which is going to be a starting degree of asymmetry that I enjoy, but then you can add 2 of these to your set over here, which will just give you a little bit extra. It's like almost like an inventor and a half because of how much the inventors actually do, but I like that developed asymmetry and the choice you get where midway through the game you find something else to add. That is easily the highlight because it adds more stuff. Now, the only area where it's going to be negative in any way for me is the fact that one of the things Raising Robots has always had a slightly hard time with is how not intuitive it might be to read an inventor. When you're going through an inventor and trying to figure out what they do, I find almost always I have to reference the rulebook, and they do give you, by the way, for these new inventors, they do give you a nice player aid, so you have all that in front of you, but I find I almost always have to reference. Some of the things are, pretty easy to look at, but so much of it is not intuitive. The symbology is a little over the top for how much these do, and I find myself referencing the rulebook to double check on that. And that's going to be true with the friends as well. Unless you're familiar with certain abilities because you just played with something and you know what that does, you're going to find yourself constantly referencing the rulebook until you get a better handle on things. Again, some of these will be a bit more familiar, especially if you've played with certain inventors or recognize certain symbols at that point, but I do find that the symbology in Raising Robots on a general level is usually not the most intuitive symbology, and you'll find yourself, which I think I'm saying for the 3rd time, you'll find yourself referencing the rulebook when it comes to those friends, as well as the new inventors. That's the only real criticism I have over there. So as far as final thoughts on Raising Robots Friends, I think Raising Robots Friends is a nice expansion to an already good game that gives you more variety to that game, while introducing elements that work seamlessly with the game. Like, they work seamlessly, they plug and play straight in. I would always include them every single time I play, and the only negative I have is the fact that there's a little bit more rules referencing to check all those abilities, and in-game rules referencing as well as you find something new and try to figure out what it does. But outside of that, it is a great expansion that will fit naturally into the game, doesn't majorly change the way you play the game, but will be a welcome addition to the game. So, as far as my rating on this, I generally rate expansions based on how well I feel they add, not based on the original game or where it's at, meaning the original game is a 4, but the expansion is also a 4 to me, meaning it doesn't change the rating of the original game, but the expansion I think it's a good expansion. I think I would definitely put it in the camp of I would recommend getting this if you like Raising Robots. Some expansions go a drop lower in the sense that they're like, oh, it's nice, you don't need it, you can get it, up to you. You definitely don't need this, you can get it, up to you, to be clear. That's always the case with anything. These are board games, but I do think that if you like Raising Robots, I think this is a good addition to get that will not majorly change the way you play the game, but will adapt seamlessly to the game and give you more things to consider, and of course, more powers and abilities and more variety to the game. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this review helpful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.